from my Lady Rebel class, and if you guys are interested, I can explain afterwards. For women, the way in which they convey their story and how they find themselves is a tricky concept in itself. In order for a woman to find herself, we see that even across time periods and cultures, as we see in Zora Neale Hurston and Hannah L. Shakes in their novels, the women aren't really capable of really conveying their stories until we give them the opportunity. The only way in which that she's able to convey her story in the best way is by telling her story in the most compelling way for her society. It is from many that we see through their search for themselves, through agency, and through the rejection of social mores, that the woman is able to deliver her story, not just to her community, but transnationally to other communities as well. In Zora Neale Hurston's novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God, we are able to see how Hurston is able to provide the female character who is able to pull off the act of rebellion off. The text's main character and heroine, Janie, is able to position herself separate from her story in order for it to be told from the unbiased point of view. The way in which she's able to do this is by being able to give her readers the image of her searching and finding her identity. One of them being mostly how she goes through all of her marriages, as all of us have read Their Eyes Were Watching God. How does she manage to find it? By being an African American woman from the South while in the late 19th century, decades before the beginning of the women's movement and liberation is the question that I personally was asking. Janie, unlike many other female characters, is able to provide how her uncovering who she is by having a sense of agency in the social environment, her time and culture through her retelling of her life. We see through Hurston's use of free indirect discourse throughout the novel narrative how she manages to find herself despite the social mores set against her in her own cultural society. To quote from the text in particular, we see how Janie's story is told with the use of free indirect discourse. She tried to make them see how terrible it was that things were fixed so that TK couldn't come back to himself. Up until he got rid of that mad dog that was in him, and he couldn't get rid of that dog and live. She made them see how she couldn't ever want to be rid of him. She didn't plead to anybody. She just sat there and told them. And when she was through, she hushed. She had been through for some time before the judge and the lawyer, and the rest seemed to know it. But she sat on in that trial chair until the lawyer told her she could come down. We see Janie being able to tell her own story while remaining both an equal party and an absent party in her storytelling. It is as we see above that she uses the style of omniscient third person or free indirect discourse in order to make her story more relatable. By using the free indirect discourse and subtle first-person interjections, the narrator is able to make the visual that much more believable. With the line, "She didn't plead nobody," proves that Jane is very much aware of what kind of society she is a part of and how things are meant to operate. By her understanding her role in the current society and being the last on the totem pole in the man's world, Janie proves that she is in fact finding herself. In order for her to pull this off, she will ultimately have to be able to truly understand who she is, and this is what we see from Janie when she is in the court scene after TK's death. If Janie had not finally reached the point of being self-aware and having agency to choose herself over her mentally deranged love, who, as many of us know, begins to lose himself after he's bitten by a rabid dog, here it is that we see that Janie is forced to finally make a decision between herself and the love that she has ultimately been trying to find throughout the entire novel. It is then as a result of the decision making that Janie enables herself to play the double role or have the double consciousness in the room of being able to manipulate the community to make them believe what she wants them to believe. Hurston is able to provide an example of the African American woman using Janie's story. She encapsulates the social mores of the 19th century Southern African American community from the perspective of their African American woman. As soon as Janie becomes widowed to her second husband and begins to become involved with TK, we see her agency begin to really take flight. Although we may have seen Janie have small forms of agency before this, her involvement with TK proves to be one of her greatest moments, simply due to the fact that she has no care for the opinions or the social mores of her community. It is then with this, Janie is able to use this self-awareness to continue using double consciousness while interacting with the current world around her. While Janie is able to pull this off within the 19th century America, it is still almost a century later that we are able to see a similar and yet dissimilar situation across the ocean in an Arabic country with Arabic women. Now, on the other hand, with the other novel that I discussed, we see where we don't really see where the Arabic women and their narrative are really pursued all that much. We most times see like the British canon or the American canon, simply due to the fact because most Americans simply see anything Arabic as terrorist, so you don't really get a chance to explore the Arabic woman's narrative style. So in Hanan Al-Sheikh's Women of Sand and Myrrh, written a few decades after Hurston's novel, she uses her characters and their points of view to also, more importantly, show a difference between the ethnicities between the characters. In Al-Sheikh's novel, as opposed to Hurston's, we are able to see the perspective of 4 different women, both native and foreign to an unnamed Arab country. Al-Sheikh is able to provide the various points of views and experiences within this unnamed Arabic country. However, it is the character Tamir that we're able to find the most similarities closest to Jane. Tamir is able to provide her journey to self-identity of an educated businesswoman by conveying her story through first-person narrative. Similar to Jane, Tamir manipulates the traditional world around her, making it evident about what it is that she wants and will get. To quote her, Tamir herself, "On that occasion, I know that what I was doing was wrong. I was probably the first woman to cross this threshold, but women went into shops and stores and bought things. Who was going to stop me? The thick black cover was over my face. Through it, I could see all the eyes, all the bodies. Nobody said to me, 'You're not allowed to come in.' And I went forward confidently and handed the man a paper. The dejection which had taken hold of me was transformed into a kind of daredevil courage." Throughout the character Tamir, we are, for the first time, able to get insight to the Arabic woman's way of life from the point of view from the Arabic woman, not from the normal British white canon, but it's actually firsthand. Tamir, although from a traditional Arabic Bedouin family, is very adamant about being able to pursue what she wishes without the restriction of her culture. For her, being modern and rejecting the social mores are what's important to her at this point. Throughout her first person reiteration of self-discovery, we're able to see the inner thoughts to the challenges she faces despite her agency. It is that as a result of her agency to pursue her dreams is what makes her story that much more shocking and awe-inspiring. For she is an Arabic woman, yet she makes her agency to pursue a future as an independent, unmarried woman that more clear through the telling of her first-person recount. Tamir utilizes her agency to use in pursuit of her self-awareness that is unlike any other of the women in the novel. She in turn makes it evident that becoming a married woman and being restricted is not something that she wishes to accomplish. Again, being the modern woman is without attachments is her goal. Being her own self is not her focus after being restricted by the community that has surrounded her for so long. Similar to Jane, Tamir takes it upon herself to make this change happen and become her own woman, as we saw with her determination with getting her permit for her salon and also getting her divorce papers for her ex-husband, who before, as the novel translates, you can tell that she's been constantly fighting with him to get the divorce papers, but naturally in the Arabic community, it's unheard of for a divorce, and even if you were to get a divorce, it's even more unheard of for the woman to be asking for the divorce. So you can see her fight there. Showing agency is not a fear for Tamir, and she shows it immensely. Her family acknowledges that she is no longer a woman that will comply with the wills of their culture, and simply just putting her head down and saying yes is no longer acceptable. Her agency to find herself has not permitted her to be that unrestricted woman as she delivers in her first person narrative. Both of these women make it clear that we are able to see they possess agency. It is, however, how they present their agency that lies the difference. From Hurston, we see that she ultimately is able to convey Janie by the end of the novel to become self-aware and still able to manipulate her surrounding community to believe otherwise. Through her double consciousness, she is able to make the community bend to her will and see what it is that she wants it to see. She knows that for the Southern Black culture, especially one set in post-slavery time setting and location, the use of the first person storytelling will enable any listener to capture her story. On the other hand, Tamir is the one that uses her own personal delivery to make her story and culture that much more visible. Tamir is aware that her actions go against the social community, the social mores of both her community and culture, and yet makes it apparent that times are changing, and as a self-aware woman who knows that simply conforming to the social mores are no longer an option, she is going to change with it and become a part of the change. In the end, it is clear to see that these two women are both examples of their cultures and of something new and fresh. With Janie, one can make the argument that she is a rebel, mainly for the simple reason that she now has done what other African American women in literature are not able to do, and that's manipulate the community to perform and react the way in which, based upon her deliverance of the story. While with Tamir, we are given a frontal view not only of her Bedouin family and community, but the transnational community as well, making her rebellious actions even more scandalous. It is then with this in mind that there is no doubt that from the deliverance of their stories and being socially aware of their breaking the taboos, that they are rebels. In fact, one could even further this by arguing that they embody the definition of the rebel modern woman. But not only are they rebelling against their own culture, they are rebelling by making it transnationally apparent of what kind of world that society is starting to reflect, where tradition is soon becoming a thing of the past, and the unknown woman is slowly but surely developing a psyche all her own that needs to be interpreted and evaluated just as much as any other literary